Hello, welcome to Thor Talk, the show all about Marvel's resident God of Thunder. On this episode of Thor Talk, the death of the Immortal Thor is nigh, as he makes his last stand against the Elder Gods. His death has been long foretold, but he will not go down without a fight. This is the story of the Immortal Thor on Thor Talk.
I am Thor the Thunderer, son of Odin, prince of Asgard, and this world is under my protection.
The Immortal Thor number 24 was written by Al Ewing and was published in June of 2025. The issue begins with a quote from Death Undreaded by Walter Savage Landor. Death stands above me, whispering low, I know not what into my ear. Of his strange language all I know is there is not a word of fear. The speaker of the poem is one who is approaching his death, which is why it is above him and whispering into his ear. Like everyone else, the speaker does not completely understand death or what comes after it, so he finds its language strange and hard to understand. However, despite this uncertainty, he has accepted death and its inevitability, so he does not fear it. This relates to Thor, who throughout the series, and especially in this issue, has been close to death. He may not completely understand the nature of his death or the role that his family members play in it, but he does not fear it. As he makes his final stand, he accepts that he is going to die, and faces it without fear. Thor crossed the Black Bridge to the Utgard lands with a prophecy of death hanging over his head. In an attempt to save Thor's life, Scourge the Executioner tried to force him to retreat, but in the end he decided to join his Allfather as one of his Einherjar. Together, they entered the living city of the dead, Nergal, and within that city that was also an elder god, they found Hermod, Thor's brother, and Heimdall. They also found Kemmer, the god of kings, at the center of the city. Thor fought the great bull, but in the end it was Loki who killed it with a mysterious arrow, and now they must all survive the wrath of the elder gods. Of all the Utgard gods, Nergal and Kemmer were closest in nature. With Kemmer dead, Nergal screamed. The horrors of the city god charged at Thor, eager to avenge their god king. This is not the time to fight. Heimdall is badly injured. They must escape this unending maze and get him to safety. Fortunately, Loki has a solution. The strange arrow that he used to kill Kemmer now returns to his hand and points the way out of the endless halls of Nergal. Thor asks what this mysterious arrow is, and Loki explains that it is the Eternity Mask, a piece of eternity itself, crafted into the bane of all kings, which is how it could kill Kemmer. Thor notes that Loki is once again blocking questions with an intricate story that surely hides a dark truth. All magic has a cost, so what is the true cost of this powerful magic that Loki now wields? As Thor's group follows Loki out of the Endless City, Utgard-Loki watches them. He could trap them, hold them in a single moment forever. But there are rules to his game with Gaia, and so for Thor to face his final trial, the story must go on. Thor has been acquiring magical weapons through passing trials linked to runes. It seems that Thor's final trial is linked in some way to his last stand. Loki mentioned earlier that Thor is missing one magical weapon that he will acquire presumably from the trial of Thurisaz. It's also interesting that Utgard-Loki does not view Thor as an enemy to be put down as soon as possible, but as a piece in a game with Gaia. Utgard-Loki either can't or won't act outside of this game, and we should view his actions in accordance with it. Given that Ewing has unabashedly been drawing inspiration from the New Testament of the Bible, it looks like Utgard-Loki takes the role of Satan to Thor's Jesus and Gaia's God the Father. Utgard-Loki instigates Thor's death, but this death is just part of the final trial, and he is apparently betting against Gaia that Thor will prevail. The Asgardians find themselves out of the city and facing the gate to Utgard. Thor calls Scourge to his side to shut the gate and keep the Utgard gods from escaping.
Foolish also Thor, you walked through this gate to face your trial, and such a trial is not to be escaped, but endured. You cannot seal the gate, if there is no gate.
Utgard-Loki created the Utgard Gate, and he had now destroyed it. And now the hordes of Utgard would sweep across Asgard, and then Midgard, and then every other realm. For who would hold them back? Cross the Black Bridge, Hermod. Carry Heimdall to safety. There is no safety! There is no gate! Not so, brother. For I am the gate. As Hermod carried Heimdall to the Golden Realm, Thor turned to Loki. And Loki was gone, without a word. Scourge is now the only one who remains, and he would stand with Thor until the end. I know, and it would be my greatest honor, Scourge. But would it be wise? Should I follow your duty is to defend the Black Bridge, or destroy it? You stood alone at Galabru, Scourge. Who else can I trust?
Give them hell, All-Father.
Nay.
Give them Asgard!
I will. Live well, good Scourge. Be happy. For the entirety of the Immortal Thor, Scourge has been seeking Thor's death, and this is more or less the conclusion of that arc, and I think it's a good conclusion. He's gone from trying to kill Thor to being his most trusted ally in his most desperate fight. More importantly, he can finally accept that he can be worth something without needing to die. That he can accomplish things as he lives and breathes, rather than seek past glories. The amount of trust and respect that Thor shows him is really what does this. A few issues ago, Thor declared that he was worthy of Mjolnir, and now he asks him to stay behind, not as a sign of disrespect, but rather to place the safety of all the realms in his hands. It feels like a fitting development for the character, to hold tight to that sense of self-worth he got from Galabru, and to see that others can value him now as well. Also, I think it's really important and interesting that Thor is the one who does this. The whole point of the Immortal Thor is the need for people to change and their inability to do so. Thor here, just by being himself, not by going through some noble sacrifice, is able to inspire Scourge to believe he can change and be better. The Thunderer turned, armed with weapons 3, ready to stand and fight. The hordes of Nurgle had arrived, and they brought with them the god of ghosts and mysteries, Medjed. He disappeared before Thor's eyes, and then he struck, for he was also the god who strikes unseen. From Asgard, all-seeing Sif caught a glimpse of Thor, and immediately ran to provide aid to the Allfather. However, when she summons the Asgardians for battle, she finds them already gathered, and tending to friends thought dead. Tears flood Sif's eyes as she sees her brother Heimdall is alive, and has returned to her. She tells Volstagg to care for their weary guests, and as Sif turns her all-seeing eyes toward Thor, he saw only blood in his eyes. I say again, not one of you will take a single step upon this bridge while Thor bars the way. You will not pass, not to Asgard, not to Midgard, not to any realm to which Thor belongs. I swear it on my blood, on the last drop of that blood. I swear it on my own death! Thor threw his axe Tormod at the hooded one. Medjed avoided the weapon and struck Thor again. He who was mightier than all the hordes of Nurgle now grabbed the Thunderer by the throat, mocking him for sending his servants away to Asgard. Nay, I sent my friends away. My servant is here. For my servant is the great thunder that makes warriors tremble in their huts. My servant is the terrible lightning that sears flesh to bone. My servant is the storm! The master of storms was in the final moments of his life, and in the face of that end, the wrath of the storm was dreadful to behold. The Utgard gods knew dread in those last moments. The city dwellers were now scattered rubble, and what is a city without people? What is a mystery that can be caught in the hand? Hooded Medjed, who is the unknown? I have a thing unknown to you, Hooded Medjed. A little while ago I threw my axe. Where is it now? Tormod returned to Thor's hand. Tormod, whose edge was as keen as Thor's own wit. Tormod, the end of all mysteries. And so, Medjed died, and Thor's last stand was over. He was alive. That was probably the longest string of cool Thor moments I've seen in an issue. The line that Thor is the gate, then his parting with Scourge, then him swearing on his death, then him summoning the storm to kill Nurgle's hordes, and finally brutally killing Medjed, like really brutally killing Medjed. I was kind of taken aback by how gory that was. Ewing really knows how to take Thor to an 11. This felt intense and very focused on Thor. That's not to say that it's without its problems. It was good to see Tormod act as a counter for Medjed, the god of mysteries, and his death was, again, surprisingly brutal. But overall, I felt that Medjed was kind of wasted. He turns invisible, then he strikes Thor one time, and then he never uses that trick again. It's like the author is trying to say, here's what he can do. Okay, that box is checked off, let's move on. He's supposed to be an elder god greater than all of Nurgle's hordes, but he goes down pretty easily. I do like the idea of giving Thor a real enemy to face in his final moments, rather than just an endless horde, but I don't think Medjed was used well enough in that position. I think Kemmer would have better filled that role, but in any case, the scene is just too short. It's really cool to see Thor call the storm and destroy the Utgard gods, but this is supposed to be Thor's guaranteed death, his Galabru, his most desperate moment. Even if Thor wins, it should be desperate, a long, hard fight that he only barely survives. And that way, what, spoilers, comes next is more of a surprise than an inevitability. Thor raises his arms in triumph and watches as the endless city retreats. He did it. Still, Thor did not see Utgard-Loki and feared that there was a final trick to play. He looked upon the Black Bridge and saw loyal Scourge raising the blood axe in celebration of Thor's victory. And beyond him was she who was his love in song and in story. In that moment, Thor knew many things. He knew that he had been a fool, but foolishness was over. He knew who his true love had always been. He knew the time ahead, with her, would be boundless. He knew that everything would be all right now. And then, he died. Well, we all knew Thor would die in the end, and we all knew Loki would be involved. But I didn't expect him to be literally holding the knife. That piece of eternity is the bane of all kings, supposedly, and it's now found the king of Asgard. Of course, Thor may be dead, but the story's not over yet. A look at the synopsis for the next issue indicates he will be returning to Vidblain to face his shadow, Donald Blake. This, I am guessing, will be his final test that will lead into the next arc. Also, I've always been a Thor Sif fan, and I was happy to see Thor acknowledge her as the love of his life. Of course, he was then brutally killed, but I'm hopeful the two will find their way to each other in the end. This issue was full of a lot of cool moments for Thor, great character development for Scourge, and a lot of interesting teases for the future. I do wish the final battle felt a bit more desperate, but Thor looked really cool in it, so I'll take it. Clearly, it's not going to be the final battle for much longer anyway. Well, that's all for this episode of Thor Talk, and I hope you enjoyed it. I apologize, I've been away for a while. I didn't expect to be gone this long, but I'm here now, which is good. Yeah, in the future, I just wanted to say I'm going to try and put out videos other than the Immortal Thor. I've been enjoying the series again, but it has felt like this channel's just become the Immortal Thor channel. Not the worst thing to be, but I wanted to branch out a bit more, so you'll probably be seeing some of that in the future. Alright, with that being said, see you next time on Thor Talk, where...
You'll behold in breathless wonder